The afternoon light slanted through my drafting table when the vibration came. I had been deep in blueprints for the new community center, tracing lines that would become walls where families would gather. My phone screen cut through the haze, her name appearing with an urgency that made me set down my pencil before the second ring completed. Something in the rhythm felt wrong. 2 rings, silence, then 2 more. A hesitation. A rehearsal. I stepped away from the parallel bars and T-squares that had organized my morning into precision. The balcony outside my studio overlooked a courtyard where workers were installing the fountain I had designed. I had calculated every angle, every pressure, every possibility except this. Her voice arrived compressed, accelerated. She would be late. Her sister needed help. An emergency at the clinic, a sick horse that couldn't wait. I watched a crane lift a limestone block into position, the operator's hands steady, and tried to match that steadiness. The details accumulated wrong. Elena had always been meticulous, the veterinarian who scheduled emergencies weeks in advance, who color-coded her calendar. A midnight call about a colicking horse, yes. A spontaneous afternoon crisis, no. The timeline compressed suspiciously. Today, the words carried a laugh that arrived a half-beat too late, a sound I recognized from our early years when she practiced presentations in the bathroom mirror. I inquired how long she expected to be. The response came wrapped in deliberate vagueness. Not to wait up. The phrase landed like a stone in still water. In 12 years, we had developed a language of absences. Business trips meant FaceTime calls. Late nights meant texted photographs. Not to wait up meant something existing in the space between words. The line went dead. I remained on the balcony longer than February warranted, watching my breath condense, replaying the cadence. After a decade, you learn to distinguish between genuine stress and performance. This had been someone reciting lines spoken elsewhere until they felt like truth. I instructed myself to dismiss it. We had navigated difficult months. My absorption in the community center had consumed evenings and weekends. She had begun retreating to the guest room for calls, explaining them as health consultations she preferred to handle privately. I had respected the boundary, accepting her smile and assurance that I worried excessively. Perhaps I did. Perhaps the foundation I believed we built was a facade I had been too busy to inspect. But the architecture of her excuse contained a flaw. Elena, the sister who documented every syringe in triplicate. I reached for my phone with hands that had drawn thousands of precise lines, but suddenly felt unsteady. The call connected on the third ring. Background noise suggested a social setting rather than emergency. I inquired casually about the clinic situation, giving every opportunity for confirmation. The silence had weight. Not static, but the dense quiet of someone reconstructing reality. Elena had not been at any clinic. She had spent the day at a continuing education seminar, followed by dinner with colleagues. She had not spoken to her sister in 3 days. The words emerged slowly, and I recognized in her voice the same dawning comprehension I was experiencing. She inquired why I would ask about a clinic emergency. I explained what I had been told. Another silence, longer, filled with the sound of her setting down a glass, of a door closing for privacy. She had moved 2 months prior. The new apartment in the historic district, with exposed brick and river view, had been carefully selected, carefully planned. Nothing about Elena was spontaneous. She approached life with systematic thoroughness. The discrepancy opened like a fissure in solid ground. I pressed my palm against the balcony railing, feeling cold metal bite into my skin. Grounding myself as the world reorganized. Elena inquired if I wanted company. I declined. What I wanted was information, coordinates, a map to the territory my wife had been exploring. Elena understood before I finished explaining. She had contacts through her professional network who could trace movements, identify patterns. The offer hung between us, a threshold I had never imagined crossing. To accept was to acknowledge that my marriage might be built on something other than what I believed. To refuse was to spend my life wondering what I had chosen not to see. I accepted. The word felt foreign, metallic. We arranged to meet in the parking structure beneath my building. I informed my project manager that I needed to attend to a family matter. The drive home took me past our first apartment, the Thai restaurant where I proposed, the park where we walked our first dog until his final afternoon. Memory constructed one version of our history while doubt constructed another. Elena waited beside her sedan, her expression arranged in the professional neutrality she employed when delivering difficult prognosis. She had already contacted someone who could access databases. We sat in her car as afternoon light faded through concrete openings above, watching dust motes drift. Her phone vibrated. She read the message twice before turning the screen toward me. The address was residential, a neighborhood I knew only from passing through to client meetings. Close enough for normalcy, far enough to prevent accidental discovery. The name attached meant nothing. A stranger. A coordinate my wife had apparently visited with sufficient regularity to establish pattern. Elena drove. I could not trust my hands on the wheel. The route took us through districts I recognized from my commute, streets I had traveled hundreds of times without noticing the particular house, the particular life being constructed parallel to my own. She inquired if I wanted to reconsider. I did not. The doubt had already done its damage. Only truth could cauterize the wound. The neighborhood revealed itself in gathering dusk. Victorian restorations, wraparound porches, warm lamps against encroaching evening. Streets where families established traditions, where secrets would find difficult purchase. We turned onto the specified block, and I felt my chest constrict before my mind processed what my eyes identified. Her vehicle was parked at the curb, positioned with casual confidence. No emergency lights, no indication of haste. Simply present, integrated, expected. Elena slowed but stopped 2 houses distant, engine idling, heater pushing against February chill. We watched. The house was modest, well-maintained, a single vehicle in the driveway suggesting solitary occupancy. Lights burned in front rooms, curtains partially drawn to create intimacy while maintaining openness. I studied the architecture without appreciating it, noting restored trim, period-appropriate colors, careful attention to presentation. Time expanded. 10 minutes became an hour, became a moment. My mind constructed scenarios. Professional consultation. Support group. Surprise for my birthday. Each dissolved against the evidence of the parked car, the prepared excuse, the systematic concealment. Then the door opened, and speculation ended. She emerged first. The smile was unfamiliar in its ease, its absence of careful arrangement. This was not someone managing crisis. This was someone comfortable, content, at home in a way she had not appeared in our space for months. Behind her came a man I had never seen. Younger than expected, athletic build, casual attire, the relaxed posture of someone concluding routine rather than clandestine meeting. He accompanied her to her car with unhurried confidence. They paused at the driver's door. She turned toward him, body language opening in a way I had almost forgotten, suggesting trust and intimacy and history. His hand found the small of her back. Automatic, unconsidered, practiced. My lungs stopped functioning. The embrace was not the compressed approximation of affection that characterized our recent interactions. It was full surrender of bodies that knew each other completely. Something inside me closed like a door. Elena's hand found my shoulder. She inquired if I wanted to approach, confront, demand explanation. I declined. The kiss confirmed what the embrace suggested. Not desperate or furtive, but comfortable, established, punctuation of a sentence written long ago. This was not new. This was not mistake. This was architecture. Structure. Parallel construction I had been too occupied to notice. She entered her vehicle, sat motionless, presumably composing the message extending her fiction about veterinary emergencies. Then she drove past without recognition, heading toward our home, toward the life she maintained with one hand while building another. Elena looked at me. My hands trembled, not with rage but shock. The decision arrived complete. We would approach. We would introduce ourselves. We would remove the foundation of secrecy. Elena's surprise was evident, but she did not question. We exited and walked to the house, gravel crunching beneath feet, each step carrying me across a threshold into a version of life where I was no longer unwitting occupant of crumbling facade. The porch light activated at our approach. Music was audible within, acoustic and melancholic. I raised my hand and knocked. The sound carried accumulated weight of months of unasked questions, observations dismissed, intimacy replaced by absence. Music ceased. Footsteps approached with unhurried pace of someone believing themselves safe. The door opened. He was younger than expected, eyes calm, posture relaxed, demeanor of someone with no reason to expect confrontation. I studied his face for recognition, guilt, understanding of his position. There was none. He was simply answering his door on an ordinary evening. I introduced myself. I identified my relationship to the woman who had just departed. The change in his expression was gradual, slow dawn of comprehension, replacing confusion with something complex. He did not close the door. He did not deny. He absorbed information, and I watched him process. Watched him access memories and realize the narrative he had been given was incompatible with the man on his porch. He had believed they were separated. He had been told the marriage existed only in legal documentation, that emotional disconnection preceded physical departure, that formalities remained because I would not accept reality. 6 months of this understanding. 6 months of dinners and weekends and gradual construction of shared life built on understanding that previous one had ended. I believed him. The realization arrived with unexpected force. Anger toward him would have been simple, clean, target for accumulated pain. But he was not architect of this situation. He was another occupant of structure she built, equally deceived. I inquired about the future she described. He hesitated, then acknowledged she spoke of eventual permanence, of legal formalities completed, relationship existing in daylight. I inquired if he loved her. The question surprised him. He admitted that he did, or believed he did, or was discovering that he did. The uncertainty was honest, and honesty felt precious. I stepped back, creating space. I informed him he deserved information. There was no separation. There were no pending documents. We shared home, bed, daily life with expressions of affection and future plans. She had lied to us both. The weight settled between us like dust after demolition. He retreated, finding support against doorframe. He repeated he had not known, and I believed him again. Elena remained silent behind me, presence a witness. He explained what he had been told about me, that I was controlling, that I would not release her, that she remained because financial entanglement was complex and my emotional dependence made departure dangerous. I considered this characterization. The late nights at drafting table, postponed vacations, assumption that love was durable enough to withstand neglect. If anything, I had been absent, not possessive. But absence provided space for her to construct whatever narrative served her purposes. I inquired if she spoke of shared future with him. His silence confirmed what words could not. I looked past him into the interior. 2 wine glasses on coffee table. Throw blanket on sofa. Artifacts of routine, comfort, life being lived in belief it was legitimate. I requested he contact her. Immediately. With speakerphone activated. The suggestion seemed to horrify him, not because he wished to protect her, but because he suddenly understood his own position required examination. Elena stepped forward, presence lending weight. He looked at his phone as if it had become dangerous, then slowly initiated the call. She responded on the 3rd ring. Her voice carried intimacy of recent physical proximity, casual familiarity of someone believing herself safe in deception. She inquired about his shower, his evening, whether he missed her already. Each word was small blade. He inquired about her husband. A pause. Then easy lie, practiced response. I was in garage, occupied with project, unaware. He pressed further. Inquired about her sister. Inquired about veterinary emergency. The silence was not confusion but calculation, rapid reconstruction of collapsing structure. I stepped closer to phone. I spoke my name. The intake of breath was audible, sharp, sound of someone drowning in air. She inquired how this was possible, but the question was rhetorical, delay tactic while she assembled defenses. I explained my location. I introduced Elena's presence. Reality became inescapable. Her first response was not denial or apology, but accusation. I had no right to follow her. The betrayal was secondary to its discovery. I allowed this to stand. Let its true nature reveal itself. He had not known she was married. Not truly. I stated this as fact. She defended herself with claim of separation, emotional distance, marriage existing in form but not substance. I reminded her of shared bed, exchanged words of love, continued presentation as couple to friends and family. She countered she had not wished to cause pain, as if pain were avoidable through sufficient management. He spoke then, voice carrying damage of recent understanding. He inquired if she had ever intended to tell me. She offered excuse of timing, needing to determine right moment, complexity of situation. The words collapsed under their own weight. He inquired if she loved him. She deflected. He inquired again. She offered care, affection, vocabulary of ambiguity. The inadequacy was visible in his face, in shoulders dropping with release of something held. I inquired about my position in her emotional landscape. The silence extended, became its own answer. She did not know. She did not know if she loved me, if she had stopped, if years between our meeting and this moment accumulated into something permanent or something that merely persisted through inertia. The uncertainty was more devastating than rejection. I informed her the divided existence was no longer sustainable. She would need to choose. Her voice cracked, requesting conversation continue in person, as if physical presence could alter mathematics. I noted she had already made choices, repeatedly, over months of parallel construction. The only remaining question was whether she could acknowledge them. I ended the call. The porch seemed colder, night pressing closer. He leaned against railing, composure fractured, offering apology. I accepted it, recognizing we were both casualties of same deception, wounds healing differently. Elena placed her hand on my arm, gesture of solidarity. We walked back to her vehicle without speaking. The secret that structured her existence for half a year had ceased to be exclusively hers. Knowledge was now shared, distributed, and with that distribution came strange steadiness I had not expected. I was not shaking. I was not raging. I was, for first time since phone vibrated against drafting table, completely certain of my position. Architecture of deception had been exposed. What remained was determining whether anything solid could be built from ruins, or whether demolition was itself necessary conclusion. The drive home passed through streets looking different now, familiar landmarks recontextualized by understanding. Elena offered to accompany me inside. I declined. This final conversation required privacy. She pulled to curb before our house. Windows dark except kitchen light left burning. Domestic detail suddenly heartbreaking in normalcy. I thanked her. Words were inadequate to complexity of what she provided. Confirmation, support, willingness to participate in difficult truth. She nodded, professional composure reasserting, though eyes carried something gentler. I exited and walked to my door, each step carrying me toward conversation I could not predict and could no longer avoid. The key turned with familiar sound. I stepped into warmth of house we built together, furnished with memories and intentions and accumulated debris of 12 years. She was waiting in living room, still dressed in clothes I watched her wear into another man's embrace, face arranged in expression I could not yet read. The distance between us was no longer merely physical. It was space between two versions of reality, and only one could prevail. I closed the door behind me. The sound was final, period at end of long sentence. Whatever came next would require different construction than attempted before. Not assembly of walls and facades, but excavation of foundation. Examination of what had been buried beneath surface of shared life. The work would be difficult and outcome uncertain, but for first time in months, I was facing something real. The deception had been exhausting. The truth, whatever its weight, offered at least possibility of solid ground.